Have you ever wondered if cosmos are a good crop to add to your cut flower farm and if they would be profitable and sustainable and easy to grow? If that's your question, I recommend that you stick around for this video and I'm going to tell you all about it. Cosmos are these flowers that are behind me, and there's a lot of really great things to love about cosmos. There's also some things that people really dislike about cosmos, so let's just break it down. Cosmos are really good to grow for a lot of reasons. So in general, they're a warm season tender annual, which simply just means that they bloom during the warm days and they don't tolerate frost. So you want to plant them when you're frost free, and then you can just grow them in direct sun. They like that. They're really great because you can start them indoors, and they also direct seed really easily. They actually also reseed themselves very easily. So it's kind of fun in the spring because I'll see cosmos volunteering popping up all over the place, which is super fun. So that is one great thing about them. So I have definitely direct seeded them many times in my life, and it just makes a nice option for growing on your cut flower farm. The other thing is they're very cheap to grow, like the seeds are very cheap, and then you pinch them when they're 6 to 12 inches tall. You pinch them back to about 3 leaf nodes, and they will branch from there, and they will branch significantly. I was looking at some of these stems that I've cut off of, and some of these plants, like one plant has 13 cuts that I made off of it. So that can vary based on variety, but one plant can give you a lot of growth, and then they will reflush. So like I talked about with zinnias, zinnias are a cut and come again, which means they just keep sending up more and more shoots. Cosmos are technically a cut and come again flower, but they're more like you cut the whole thing blooms at once, you cut it all, and then they'll send up a second flush. I don't find the second flush as great, and I've really kind of wondered, is it worth it to grow second flush, or is it better to just rip it out and grow something different or start fresh or start new? So I've done both. This year's I did let most of mine rebloom. So let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you do on your farm and what you find profitable. But I have heard people say, cosmos are amazing. You cut them all, you cut them back, you fertilize them, and they'll just regrow and give you a whole nother crop. I haven't found that to be super the case in my situation, but maybe that's because of where I live. I'm in West Michigan in zone 6A, so I don't know, maybe they don't have enough time, but mine will rebloom, but they're just not as great. But the first flush, the first cuts are amazing. Our guinea fowls are going crazy. What in the world? I don't know what they're all upset about. Anyway, just ignore them. Cosmos also come in a lot of really great colors and shapes or forms. So there's doubles and singles. I really like, in my opinion, the most superior white cosmos is called afternoon white. That's the one that I find is the best to grow. It just gives you really strong, sturdy stems. So cosmos look really great. They grow really tall. I always net cosmos because otherwise they will fall over in my experience. They grow very tall. Some cosmos, they'll grow really tall, but their stems are really spindly. And when you grow them for cutting and you cut them, they'll just wimp out and crash and they won't hold in a vase at all. So you got to kind of know which varieties are good for cutting. They're all super tall and great in that aspect, but some of them just are not as good for cutting because they kind of wimp out. So I like afternoon white. The double click series is good. They do have a double click white, and that one's okay, but I still think that the afternoon white is better in my opinion, and my florists tend to really like it. And it's this really gorgeous single white. I mean, it is like perfection, like the most perfect, beautiful flower ever. And then the variety behind me right here that's blooming out is called apricota. I was starting with another flower farming friend of mine here that lives just a couple miles from me, and she was like, I think apricota cosmos are my favorite flower ever. And they really are just really stunning. They have different striping in them. They're beautiful. I love them. I would say they're not as good a vase life as the afternoon whites, but they're pretty good. Like I said, I also like the double click. I really want to grow more cosmos. I really want to grow a variety called Kiiro, Kiiro, which is like a buttery yellow. I've heard a lot of really great things about that from other flower farmers, so I definitely want to add that to my flower farm. And then Rubenza is a great burgundy kind of color, great for the fall. So I don't know that I'd have that in July, but I definitely want to add that to my fall lineup. Like I want a whole bed of it. So how much do I plant? Well, I actually now this year I started planting them with my paper pot transplanter, which isn't like a real typical thing, but if you're on my scale of flower farming, you might want to look into what a paper pot transplanter is. I did a video about it. I'll link it in the description. Basically, you plant them 9 inches apart and you want to pinch them. And that's kind of what I still do. So I did estimate in like a 50-foot bed, I get 260 or somewhere right around there. So you get a lot of plants and then you pinch those, and then each plant, let's say, gives you 6 to 10 usable sellable stems. So you're going to get a lot of cosmos off of 50 feet of cosmos. So what I usually do is I grow like 50 feet of white, 50 feet of apricot. Like I like to grow about 50 feet of each color. In the fall here, I did this bed of mixed. This actually was white and apricot, and I sold all the white like immediately. It's just been a really great seller for me. One thing is I think each succession has about 3 weeks. So every time you plant, you can harvest off of your crop for about 3 weeks. And like I said, it really flushes. So you can harvest for about 3 weeks, and then it's going to be pretty much not producing anything until it reflushes, which takes a couple of weeks also. I just harvested this last kind of bunch of flowers, which are, my daughter was just out here and she said, Mom, these are dying. I was like, yeah, they are. Wouldn't have typically even sold this, but I had a wedding florist. She's doing a little event and she needed one bunch. She was like, please, like anything that looks okay. I'm sure it'll be fine. So anyway, this is what I got. And then in the fall, actually, cosmos love the fall. They like the shorter days. They bloom really prolifically and they're great. They will also bloom in June as well, but they love the shorter days. So don't forget to fall plant a succession. And a succession simply means that you plant the same crop multiple times. So you do a planting multiple times. So cosmos, I've been planting 3 times. Okay, so what's not to love about cosmos? Cosmos are not one of those flowers that you can just cut twice a week. You really got to stay on top of cutting them and harvesting them at the proper harvest stage. A lot of people say to harvest them in the cracked bud stage, which I used to do, like really like they're not even fully open yet, but you can see they're colored up and starting to open, because the idea is you want to get them before the bees pollinate them, because when the bees pollinate them, then it triggers the plant to die and the blooms will fade. That is true. I just find that my florists really appreciate it when they're more open. So what I tend to do is, like, if it's in cracked bud stage at night, by the morning it'll be open and it's probably not very pollinated. Bees don't pollinate at night. And so I get them when like the first bloom is open. I just think they sell better and they seem to last just as long, really. So what will happen is you'll have a spray of buds on a cosmos stem, and that first bloom will fade and shatter, but then the rest of the buds will continue to open to a certain point on that stem. So they will keep, blooming and opening for the end customer, especially like for wedding clients and wedding customers, like wedding florists, they need them more open and they want them more open. And so I just find that they appreciate the product more if they're slightly more open. The other thing I do is if I cut a stem that has some blooms that are already pollinated, I will just clip out those buds and it will still leave me, with a really good spray of buds on that flower stem. So I do that as well. So yes, that is a little tricky and a little tedious, and people don't love that you have to deadhead them, you have to harvest them every day, or they're really tangly. I don't find them very tangly. The thing is with the netting, you can either do two things. You can either bring it down through the netting, or cosmos are so tall most of the time I'm cutting at the netting. Like I'm just cutting them as at the netting. So I'm not messing below the netting. Now in the fall, this succession didn't get as tall because it's in the fall, but in my summer successions, they were significantly taller than this. And you could just cut them at the netting and you don't even have to worry about the netting. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Okay, let me tell you my cosmos story. It was 2019. I had 3 children, 3 and under, very small children, and I just felt like I need to do something. I need to get outside with these kids. And I drove by a flower farm called Recourses Flower Farm. Maybe some of you are familiar with Lori, and she lives like 3 miles from me. I had no idea who she was, and I drove by this flower farm. That was in 2018, actually. I was like, wow, that's so cool. You could grow flowers. And we had just moved here to this 2-acre property in Michigan, and I was just like coming out of the Air Force as a nurse. And so, you go from this like full-time job, working a lot of hours, to having 3 kids, boom, 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 all 3 right in a row, moving. And I just felt like I didn't know what to do with myself. So I was inspired by Lori and thought, maybe I can grow flowers too. but I had no idea how to grow flowers. I'd never tried to grow flowers. I mean, besides like, like petunias, right? Like landscape flowers. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to take a year, like absolutely no pressure, and I'm not going to try and sell anything. I'm just going to grow things. And so I started researching cut flowers. I actually took Lori's course, like the backyard gardening 101. It's not a farming course, it's just a growing course. It was amazing. It's really great. Actually, I have taken a lot of flower farming courses, and Lori's course about growing flowers is one of the best I've ever seen. Like, she's a very good teacher. But like I said, it's not a farming course. And so I took her little course about growing a cutting garden, and I just started growing seeds, right? Like nothing big investment here, just getting seeds. And so one of the things was cosmos, which I don't even know if I could have told you what a cosmos was before I started researching growing flowers. I grew cosmos, and I did everything like Lori said, right? Like I started them, I pinched them, I netted them, all the things. They were taller than me. They were like cosmos trees. They were amazing. I was so incredibly blown away with cosmos. I just loved them, and they were super fun and beautiful. They're very whimsical and have a lot of movement. I mean, they're just lovely. That's how my journey with cosmos started. And then I started flower farming. I really wasn't sure what avenue I wanted to go in. Like, I really thought I would sell retail. And then I took Lisa Mason Ziegler's course on farming in 2020. And I thought, I think this might work better to sell to florists with my small children. We didn't really want people on our property, right? This whole, like, how do you do this? How am I going to sell my flowers? Which, by the way, if you want to learn how to sell flowers to florists, I have a download, free tips for selling flowers to florists. And so that's how I sell flowers. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description below. So I started growing these cosmos, and I grew them for my farm. And then I was like, yeah, these are really kind of annoying. I don't know that I really want to deadhead them. In my flower farming journey, I have been pregnant 2 times. So I had 3 children before I started the farm, and then I've had 2 more kids. So there have just been a few years where I have not tried to grow my business. I've just tried to maintain. I actually didn't grow cosmos one year, and I can't even remember what year it was. And saying that right now, I feel like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But I did, and it was fine. And then I reintroduced cosmos in very specific varieties. And I think that was it. Like, I wasn't growing the same varieties that I'm growing now. I don't even remember what exactly I was growing, but the varieties that I think I'm growing now are superior to those, and they're better cut flowers, and they sell better. And I know the systems of how to do it better. Since then, 2019, I grew them, was completely amazed. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped growing them, but I've definitely been growing them for at least 3 years. But I love them, and they're actually a crop that I want to grow more of because they are so profitable. I was just looking at my Rooted Farmer Analytics, which is the online marketplace where I sell my flowers, and they are my fifth in sales for 2025, and the season's not done yet, and it's a little strange, like not everything is accounted for, and I'm pretty sure they're going to become fourth in my complete sales for 2025. They're just a really great flower. Wedding and event florists really like them, which I sell to a lot of wedding and event florists, and so I'm looking to add more cosmos to my cut flower farm. But I know like Shannon from the Dirt on Flowers, she's like, I hate cosmos because she hates harvesting them. Sometimes people do really find them annoying, but I think usually they win out on a flower farm because they're so easy to grow and everybody wants them. You can grow a lot of them in a really small space, which makes them really profitable. So I'd love to know in the comments, what team are you on here? Like, do you love cosmos? I love their whimsical, beautiful, arching heads, and just they're just so beautiful. The fact that they sell a lot, or you find them hard to sell and you don't really grow them on your farm. And I have heard people that sell retail don't love them as much. From what I've heard from different flower farmers, some more retail flower farmers say they're not as great of a crop. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend that you go check out the video that I did about campanula. They're an amazing spring flower, and you probably still have time to plant them, and I think they're just such a stunner for spring. I order them from Plugs. If you liked this video, go check that one out for knockout spring sales. I think no matter how you sell, campanula is just an amazing flower for a cut flower farm. And until next time, thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next time.